continue the recording. Okay. Maybe this is all not worth now doing, but let's see. My apologies for this break. Anyways, this is the film.
There is no sound.
No sound?
From ancient Hatzor. Returning to this area after a long absence, the Jews must begin from scratch. The government, the Jewish agency, and Histadrut dovetail their efforts as the process of integration begins. Coming from Poland, Morocco, Yemen, or Tunis, the people find the temporary borders tolerable, knowing that soon things will improve.
So knowing, So knowing that things will improve, right? So it's such a weird film. Of course, things haven't improved really much in Kiryat Shmona. So many ironies and distortions to unpack. There's no time to do that. But coming from Poland and ancient Chatzor, you can see this kind of attempt to put it in this ultra-Zionist framework. When you literally see that these are North African migrants and the rudimentary conditions of life that they had. Over the years in Kiryat Shmona, there were failed attempts to develop the town through commerce, tourism, and some heritage projects. Much of the heritage effort concentrated around this compound, and it's the compound near a lush riverbank splitting the two parts of the city. That's a story in itself. It's called by locals the jungle, and it's surrounded by on two sides the Soviet-style shikunim blocks of Kiryat Shmona. And it's a beautiful and large mosque dating from 1906. In 1949, the residents of Kfar Giladi dismantled the ceiling of the mosque to prevent former residents from returning. In 1955, the national infrastructure company Solel Boneh renovated it, and the place was used by residents as a wedding and gathering hall. Between 68 and 86, it was functioning as a courthouse. And in 87, it was where the city museum was located, the archive, which is another whole story in and of itself. In essence, from the late 1980s, the mosque was abandoned, but it remains the pearl of the city, an architectural gem that continues to draw proposals from planners and renovation plans. One of the latest initiatives that I investigated was actually not implemented, but it was to use the compound as an entrance to a nearby site for Mizrahi Heritage Village called the Founders' Home, Beit HaMeyasdim. So the idea for this commemoration project, which you can see here, is centered on the founders, on the Transitaires, basically, to be visited by local schools, including a compound recreating the Ma'abarot shacks, as part of a large community project involving residents telling their stories about the early days of the city. From the project booklet, I took the story of the late resident, Yaakov Aflalo. As you can see, his is a story of a classic transitaire. He was born in 1928 in Morocco, in the city of Safi, to a family of textile merchants. He passes in Grand Arenas before he lands on exactly this interesting date, 15th of May, 1950. The 15th of May is, for Palestinians, Nakba Day, Nakba Commemoration Day. He is sent straight from the port of Haifa on a truck to Al-Hassa Ma'abara. And for several years, he endures life intense and harsh labor as a welder in construction work. From this humble beginning, he becomes a municipality employee and the main caretaker of a local synagogue. He is remembered as a pillar of the tight-knit Maghrebi community of Kiryat Shmona. So today, Kiryat Shmona is a city in crisis. Only a quarter of its residents are back after the mass evacuation of the north, immediately after October 7. Most Kiryat Shmona residents are desperate to come back. They have nowhere else to go. I want to raise the painful specter of prescribed social destinies, of the transitaires and their descendants as people who are immobilized or / rooted in the country's periphery. Both readings are equally valid in this case. I want to raise the question whether the story of this city in constant security and economic crisis, unable to develop itself or its own history, story, or its memory, is actually a positive story. This is a story about how lives and social destinies are lived despite all the harshness, and how they may be transformed by acts of historical recognition. In my reading, the very idea of establishing a founder's home in the former Al-Hassa compound is emblematic of Mizrahi and Palestinian entanglements and the inseparability of our memory and heritage. An unspoken acknowledgement conveyed in this project is that at the core, our heritage cannot be told without preserving the civilization that built this marvelous mosque structure, without remembering those who were expelled and not allowed to return, without remembering that we were once too refugees and transitaires. So basically, I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts, and then I'm wrapping it up. The Transitaires was researched under the thick and heavy clouds, both of the fog of history and this darkest of all moments in Israel-Palestine. And what I hope is that my most notable contribution in this book will be to humanize the people through family histories, to link through the thread of the Dayan family migration story and other family stories, Europe, MENA, and Israel-Palestine, and to examine their entanglements. I believe that the strength of my approach is in synthesizing disparate bodies of knowledge and fragments of history. The book has no pretense to tell a history of, not of the migration and not of Mizrahi. Its interdisciplinary framework is sensitive to local context, interpretations, and nuances. With this approach, I hope to connect public squares in the Arab world, in Europe, and in Israel-Palestine. These connections capture the polyphonic worlds that diasporic communities and communities with diasporic sensibilities daily inhabit. These are indispensable incubators of democracy, since they encourage an open conversation and dialogue essential to building trust and overcoming legacies of traumatic pasts and presents, as well as fighting attacks on shared world spaces and sensibilities. And finally, we have to say it very clearly, against repressive framings, and the Mizrahi case particularly, the immense repression still and denials and distortions of Zionism as everyday common sense. We must push back in a complicating direction. Mizrahi heritage offers a complication, a noise that allows us to bend straightforward narratives, including narratives about Israel as settler colonial state, including ideas about Israeli societies that people may have. We must continuously chart ever more subtle portrayals of social worlds as they are lived and as they are transregionally and locally formed, informed, and entangled. That's it. I hope I did not exhaust you entirely. Let me stop the sharing.
Thank you.
Yes. So do you want to take a small break, or shall we just go on?
I think we can go up.
We can go on? Yeah,
Yes.
good. So thank you again so much for the opportunity to think about how this book and how to present it. I really appreciate that.
We will take some questions. We will start with the maybe.
Stop the recording, I think.